welcome to the Friends with Ryan segment. This is the segment where friends, both old and new, and sometimes family, comes in to talk about sports. And we've got a special preview of the Major League Baseball season for 2022. We finally got to the point where we can play Major League Baseball. It starts this week, and if you're watching on Belly Up TV, it may have already started. So we're gonna get into this installment of Friends with Ryan with a couple special guests. We're gonna preview the Major League Baseball season. So I'll go ahead and bring in my guests right now. We have from Major League Baseball Daily, one of the co-hosts of the show. We have LJ LaFiura. LJ, how are we doing today?
Fantastic. It's been a great week for me because we're now in Boston. New England weather's so volatile, but it's finally gotten to the point where it actually feels like that Northeast spring baseball weather, and it really starts to hit home for me. So I'm plenty excited right now.
All right. And to my right, to my right, because I'm still getting used to the camera, is my nephew who's been on the show a couple times before. My nephew Christian. Christian, how are we doing today?
Good. It's been a very long day. Let's just say that. I was up at about 6 o'clock this morning. I had to drive to St. Bonaventure to play 3 games today.
Fun.
And it decided to snow. So I was very cold. So
I may need
New England weather.
Yeah, New England weather where you are, LJ, and borderline Canadian weather where Christian was today.
Yeah,
I may need a clip of that to install at the end of the show.
And that's funny too, because that St. Bonaventure area compared to the majority of places around it, it's tucked behind the mountains in a place where they get next to no snow comparatively. So that's funny that it managed to hit today.
It wasn't too hard of a snow. It was like flurries, but not flurries. It was cold though. It said 32, but it felt like it was 10 degrees. It was freezing.
Never in the Northeast does it ever feel like it should be.
I was bundled up with 2 sweatshirts underneath my jersey, and I was still freezing.
All right, so baseball, gentlemen, is starting this week. I'm sure you're both excited. LJ, I know you're a big baseball fan, and Christian, well, since you were a little kid, you've always been a fan of baseball. But we're going to start off with doing some previews of each division. And actually, LJ and Christian both, can you catch me up? I mean, I've kind of paid attention to what's going on with the baseball season. We're going to have expanded playoffs. We're going to have, I don't know what happened with what happened with the details of the new CBA. Can you both fill me in on what's going on with this season, and also tell the audience who may not be paying attention to baseball what's going on for this season?
Yeah. So really, for the audience at this point in time, it ended up being kind of, in a way, a whole lot of nothing with this CBA, which is very frustrating when you see games get lost off the beginning of the season and get a crunched schedule now because of things that really the majority of the stuff that was supposed to be happening or people wanted to happen didn't come to fruition. But from a fan standpoint, the big 2 things that ended up happening here is the universal DH. So the DH will be in every single lineup, American League and National League. It doesn't matter what park you're in. Every single team has the option to have a designated hitter. And then that extra playoff spot is so huge as well, because you're really going to get an opportunity to see so many more teams who most of the time they're really good or they have really good back end runs and would have been scary to see in the playoffs. Think like a Seattle from last year where they were really good, but they just weren't good enough to hold on at the very end after they made that run. That type of team makes the playoffs this time. And that's very, very exciting to me. Past that, it just ended up being a lot of, minor pay things, whether it's extra bonuses for the guys who can't reach arbitration yet and stuff like that ended up being really where the league found themselves by the end of the negotiating process.
That sound about right, Christian?
Yeah, he basically covered everything. The thing that I'm most excited about is definitely the DH in the playoff spot. We had that one little glimpse of the universal DH in 2020, and that was just it was awesome. And it just like really helped the game. I feel, you don't want to really see pitchers hit. Like I'm a pitcher myself, and I hate hitting. It's hard, but so let the people that are good at it do it. But that extra players fought, like you said, like the Mariners last year. I so badly wanted them to get in. So I'm excited for this year to see all those new teams in there.
All right, so let's get into the nitty gritty of everything, guys. So we're going to start off. We're going to do division by division, and we'll kind of go into who we think is going to make the playoffs this year. So let's start in the AL East, and we've got 4 really good teams in that division. We've also got Baltimore, but we have 4 really solid teams in that division. Hey, look at that! He's got the Yankees cap on, and Christian, I didn't tell you, LJ's a Red Sox fan.
Oh yeah,
so.
Do we need to get the Kike Hernandez sunglasses out? I have no problem playing this game.
Oh man, that's like Bret Hart sunglasses right there. So,
Respect it.
So let's start with the AL East. And Christian, I'm going to start with the conversation with you. Could all 4 teams potentially win this division?
Win is a really tough thing, but yes, I do think that all 4 teams have a pretty decent chance of actually coming out on top. I mean, especially the Blue Jays have a very, very good lineup. I know they lost Semien, which is a tough loss for them. But Blue Jays have a really stacked lineup, and they have a really good pitching staff too. But even the Yankees, like I know I was really nervous for the start of the season, so we didn't really make any off-season moves, like big off-season moves. But from what I've seen in spring training, like Higashioka, he's really performing out there, and Donaldson too. And I'm excited right now. It's going to be really close. I think the Red Sox can be in it too, even though they're not really my favorite team. But I got to give props where it's due. And then the Rays are always in it. Rays have a very low salary cap, or not salary cap, a salary, but they're still
low
one of the best
payroll.
teams. One of the best teams in the AL, I have to say. And then you got the Orioles. I think the Orioles could be a sneaky in there.
Interesting.
All
right. LJ, what are your feelings about the AL East? Could any of these 4 teams win the division?
I think all 4 of those teams could easily win the division. Playoff-wise, realistically, only 3 of them will get in, but 3 of them definitely will get in. I think I'd have to agree. My favorite coming into the year objectively will be the Toronto Blue Jays, just because, I look at what they did. Yes, they lost stars. They lose Robbie Ray, the guy who goes out and wins the Cy Young for them last year. But then they come in and they double down on it by going and get Kevin Gausman, who was a Cy Young frontrunner for the majority of last season, and then also adding on to that with another all-star in Yusei Kikuchi. And then on the offensive side, you have a situation where you lose Semien, and they do almost the same thing by bringing in another very, very talented player in Matt Chapman to come play third base, which was a spot of defensive weakness. Overall, Biggio and Bichette, just defensively, they weren't all there at that age, especially to be playing such prime defensive positions on the field. So overall, this makes them a lot stronger. I would have to say they're my favorite. Red Sox are probably my second favorite, just because, I would have liked to see them bring in more pitching. I think if they're to be a serious contender, they need to figure out more pitching along the way. But at the end of the day, their one big move this offseason was one of the best fits in terms of team fit of any one of the offseason. As for the other 2, I think they've got things that are really going to hurt them, at least in the short term, and really set them back. The Rays have flat out no pitching right now. It's like literally everyone's hurt. Everyone's hurt, or they have no experience with the team in this system. And so it could end up just being an absolute dumpster fire. I could easily see that for the first at least 2 months for the Rays, where no matter what they do, no matter how much of the analytics they use, they're not going to be able to figure it out because they don't have those guys. And ultimately, the Yankees came up short. Yes, preseason can show you some, but it doesn't show you everything. And I don't think that necessarily enough of the moves were made, or at least the big enough moves were made to completely reset the way this team was. That was the talk going into this offseason was you need to make big changes for this team to be able to compete with everyone else. It's too power heavy, hitter heavy. It's too get the ball in the air heavy. It's too unathletic. And what is their big move? They go and grab a $25 million a year, 35-year-old third baseman, I believe he's 35, in Josh Donaldson. Like, the moves just did not work with what this team needed to do. So ultimately, I think those two teams are the biggest disadvantage of the 5 coming into the year.
Now, I'm kind of curious as to what your thoughts on as to why the Yankees couldn't secure any of the big names. I have 3 theories as to why. I think part of it had to do with an already bloated payroll. They got to pay more luxury tax on it. I also think when players hear Yankees, they don't associate it with fun. They think it's very corporate, very. I mean, Christian, if you were to be on the Yankees right now, you would have to lose that hair. You have to lose your mullet, which is unfortunate because that's a sweet mullet right now.
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
But luckily, I'm not on the Yankees.
Yeah. And I think the third reason is because I think Cashman and Boone are satisfied with the team they already have. They've also got some young studs in AAA and AA. They'll be starting out in AA and probably going to AAA next season. A couple of them, one of them being Austin Wells, who's a catcher, and the other one being, I believe, is Jason Rodriguez, the Martian, the outfielder.
Jason Dominguez.
Just Dominguez. Okay, thank you. I appreciate you correcting me on that. Jason Dominguez, who's the alien, and that guy could be a stud for years to come. But I just want to get your thoughts as to why the Yankees couldn't land the big free agent.
We go into me or?
Yeah, let's go, LJ. I'll go to you first.
Yeah. Overall, look, it's a matter of money, or at least how much Hal Steinbrenner is willing to invest in this team, because at the same time as you are in the luxury tax, it doesn't mean that much at the end of the day. I mean, look at the Dodgers. They're able to do all of this with starting with a good homegrown roster and then spending obscene amounts of money to just make it better and better, not really caring about this luxury tax because they're making enough money on top of this by investing in the roster that it's going to make up for itself. And the Yankees are an even more valuable team and a more valuable franchise than the Dodgers are at this point. So it makes no sense to me for them not to invest, especially when you have guys like Stanton and Judge, who that prime is kind of close. The window that started in 2017 is almost virtually shut at this point. That core, that roster isn't there anymore. And so that's a huge point of disappointment to challenge your theory, not respectfully challenge your theory on them being happy with the team. It didn't seem like they were that happy with the team coming out of last season, especially the front office. So it just seems like they weren't willing to spend the money that it took to get one of these deals done. They weren't able to give Carlos Correa top infielder money. They weren't willing to give Trevor Story $23 million a year, but they were willing to give Josh Donaldson $23 million a year. And those two were definitely not the same level of positional need. They didn't need a third baseman. They desperately needed a shortstop and really still do. So it's just, I think it's a matter of ownership not being willing to be aggressive enough to go out and actually capitalize on this playoff window.
Christian, do you agree, disagree? What's your thought process?
Yeah, I agree with the last part he said. So the whole paying Donaldson $25 million a year and not giving everybody else that, it's kind of disappointing to me because we traded away Gio Urshela. I mean, Gio Urshela was he was probably one of the biggest names on the Yankees, especially last year. He had a very good season. And I was very sad to see him go. But I feel like the only upside that Donaldson has is he hits the ball hard a lot. He had one of the highest average exit velocities in the league last year, and that's really something that the Yankees can work off of, I feel like. And with the whole shortstop situation, I feel like if we put Gleyber Torres at second base, he would feel a little more comfortable, but then that leaves us with a little sticky situation with where we put DJ LeMahieu and Anthony Rizzo, and it just gets into a whole mix of possibilities you could do with that lineup. it's really tough right now. Boone has a really tough decision to make because there's going to be some guys that aren't starting on opening day that should start on any other team probably.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move on from the AL East. We're going to move on to the AL Central. Is it Chicago? This is the White Sox division to win or to lose, or could they potentially run away with this division? Christian, I'll start with you. What's your feeling about the AL Central?
I really feel like it's their division to lose, to be completely honest. I mean, they have a great team, great pitching, great lineup, but if they don't figure stuff out early, they might fall a little bit behind. I know the Royals are a good young squad that could pop out certainly anytime. I liked them last year, but they kind of underperformed. The Twins are kind of good. I mean, they have Urshela from the Yankees, Correa, new signing. I mean, Gary Sanchez, he can pop off at any moment. So I can really see them coming in either second or third, but I feel like the other two teams aren't really doing anything right now. I mean, the Guardians, they didn't do much in the offseason, and
other than rebrand, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then the Tigers are going to be the Tigers for a little while longer, unfortunately.
Gotcha. All right, LJ, agree, disagree?
I agree. It's their division to lose, but it's not going to be. There's no situation I can feel comfortable where they run away in a very easy division. Just because you look at what you saw last year, and sure, some of their best players weren't healthy for large stretches of the season, but they put themselves in a poor position by the end of the year, and part of that came down to management. I really don't think Tony La Russa has it anymore, and that's not his fault. The game just moves beyond people. Sometimes, you retire for a reason. And so overall, they're going to be able to do well, but there's going to be a lot of outside factors hampering this team from really pulling away in this division. Minnesota is going to have a really interesting situation. They brought in almost an entirely new pitching staff, Sonny Gray, Dylan Bundy, Chris Archer, along with putting Carlos Correa in, and you look at the splits, one of his best ballparks. So this is really a good opportunity for them. I would say number 2 in this division, and it'll be a close number 2 to the White Sox, will either be the Twins or the Tigers. The Tigers are primed for their bounce back to start. I really love Casey Mize. I think he had a fantastic year last year. Frankly, he should have been an all-star last year. And I'll stand by that to the day I die. You now have a full second season for Tariq Skubal and Matt Manning with a guy who's been around, a proven leader in Eduardo Rodriguez there to start things up. And I wouldn't be surprised if we look at Spencer Torkelson and end up with a Rookie of the Year. So all of a sudden you've got Javier Baez, Spencer Torkelson, Akil Baddoo in this lineup. There's a lot to like here, and there's a very high ceiling for the Detroit Tigers this year.
Fascinating thoughts, gentlemen. Both from the both of you. I was surprised. Didn't figure Detroit would be in the conversation, but LJ filled us in nicely with those some of the names on their roster.
Not gonna lie, I kind of forgot they had Javier Baez on their squad.
Yeah, I totally forgot that.
I
Raise
totally
your hand.
blanked on that.
They had Javier Baez.
Well,
Yeah.
I was so excited about it this offseason because I really thought they were going to end up with Correa until they went and grabbed Baez before the lockout, because it just seemed like a no-brainer for him to go back to his former manager in a situation where he can, again, step in and be that same leader that he was in Houston. It felt like the best fit out of any free agent, but that ended up not being the way things went. They'll be fine with Baez.
All right, we're going to move on to the AL West now. LJ, I'll start with you. Is it going to be a 2-team fight to the end for between Houston and Seattle this year?
I would like to see it. I'm not sure that Seattle necessarily has enough this year. We're talking about the best offense in baseball paired with a very young pitching staff that's only going to continue to get better in Houston. I really like what Seattle is doing. They're going to make a really strong run and a really strong campaign this year. But at the age that the majority of their best players are going to be at, I mean, you think about like Julio Rodriguez, Jared Kelenic, we call him Jared Kleenex on our show. They're going to need to step up big. You're not going to just be able to rely on guys like Jesse Winker, who they brought in this year to get the job done. I see them as more a year away from being division contenders, but they're 100% in the wild card race right now.
Christian, same question to you. Is it going to be a 2-team race in the AL West this year?
This is a good question because I like another team that I think you might have forgotten about, the Rangers. Rangers went out and made some big offseason moves.
That's true.
They signed Corey Seager, who's one of the, in my opinion, a top 3 shortstop in the league. He's in his prime right now. I mean, and then you have Marcus Semien as well, who had a great year last year. So I really think it's a 3-team race, but I do agree with what LJ said. I think the Mariners are a year away. I think they're a 3rd-place team right now. But I think it really comes down to the 2 Texas teams. I mean, Oakland just sold away Manaea to the Padres, so they're obviously out of it. So I really think it's those 3 teams that are going to be racing for it. But I could honestly see the Mariners getting into the playoffs this year. I really can see that.
Now, I'm kind of curious as to what your feelings are. Both your feelings are about the Oakland A's. Are they shitting a lot of payroll on purpose because of operating costs, or do you think this might be a prelude to what the Expos basically did from 1995 all the way to 2004, where they're selling assets only to move in the end? I think they might skip town, probably wind up playing somewhere like Las Vegas or Scottsdale
Buffalo.
Buffalo.
Honestly, I had a very long talk about this rant last year. I certainly couldn't do it now and do it justice, but I feel like I can put together a really good defense of why Buffalo would be a great city to have a Major League Baseball team again.
I 100% agree. I mean, especially with football. I mean, do you see what they bring with football? I mean, I myself, I'm in Rochester right now, so I kind of have to be a Bills fan. I never really followed football before, really, probably a couple of years ago. But I mean, I went to a Bills game this year, and it was electric. We'll just say that. So I think they could pack the house with baseball, even better, honestly.
But Ryan, to answer your question, I'm not sure they're necessarily going anywhere. Look,
okay.
They did reopen conversation for that new stadium, and it doesn't make sense to leave your spot if you have a chance to get that new stadium that you want. As long as there's a chance, they're not putting that in immediate plans. What it feels more like to me was this season was a major shift in their philosophy, in terms of not philosophy, but mindset about their team. You look at last offseason, they offered 10 years, $150 million to Matt Chapman. That's unheard of for the Oakland A's to give that type of long-term extension to anyone. And they decided to try to pay one of their best players. All of a sudden, you come into this season, and it's such a lackluster performance across the board that they finally realized, all right, the core group that we've been relying on to get us to the playoffs and hope we get lucky isn't good enough right now. So it's better for us to have this little fire sale, get some assets back, and then maybe a few years from now, we're going to have that same type of core. We're going to have our new Matt Chapman, Matt Olson type situation where there's these guys we can rely on to be really good and then fill around them with bargain brand pieces. That's ultimately, they're going to end up back at the same place. There's still going to be that fringe wildcard team that, always gets there but doesn't do much. It's just going to be a few minutes because the core that they had built around them was not strong enough.
All right. So we're going to move on to the National League side now. We're going to move on to the National League East. This is going to be a very interesting division, I think, between 3 teams in particular: Philly, the Mets, and Atlanta. Who winds up on top at the end? And LJ, I know you got to go in a couple minutes, so I'll start with you. Which one of these teams could be the division winner in October?
It's going to be Atlanta. I feel very convinced on that. I don't see a scenario where these other teams make it, because I actually, just a couple weeks ago, we picked our winners and losers of the offseason. Philadelphia was my loser of the offseason because, yes, they made a lot of really good moves. Corey Knebel, Kyle Schwarber, Nick Castellanos. But what I saw in that was a team that spent a lot of money to get just a little bit better. This is still by far the worst defense in the league and possibly the worst defense in the modern era. And that's going to really hamper this team. I don't think the relief core is nearly strong enough to contend. And Atlanta didn't take a far enough drop back for either of those teams to be serious contenders for the division. As for the Mets, yes, they tried. They spent money, and they spent money very wisely. But at the same time, they cut the gap in half, but they still needed Atlanta to take a step back. And by replacing Freddie Freeman with Matt Olson and bringing in Kenley Jansen, they did not take nearly the step back that was required for either of those teams to actually be in contention.
All right, Christian, what's your feeling about the NL East? Who comes up? Who's on top at the end?
I have to agree with LJ. I think Atlanta's going to come out on top. I mean, I feel like they've only gotten better, to be completely honest with you. I mean, they're bringing back Acuna, who was out all last season. I mean, I'm so excited to watch Acuna this year. He's like one of my favorite players in the league right now. He's like he brings a lot to the team. I really don't think they got any worse bringing in Matt Olson from Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman's a great player, but I don't think Matt Olson's much worse than he is. I mean, average-wise, they're a little bit far apart, but Matt Olson brings almost the same thing that Freddie Freeman does. As for the Mets and the Phillies, I was excited for the Mets this year, but I feel like Atlanta's just gonna kind of own that division. I mean, I feel like they're just too good for the Mets to really gain any ground on them. The Mets they did get a lot better, bringing in Eduardo Escobar, Max Scherzer. I mean, it's unfortunate that DeGrom is out. I'm disappointed to see that because he's probably the best pitcher that the league has seen in a while, and I can say that with confidence. But it's going to be tough for them to really gain ground in Atlanta because they don't really have that solid starting rotation and bullpen. They're going to give up a lot of runs this year. I feel like that's an issue for them and always has been. And like what LJ said with Philly, like they didn't really get much better, not enough better to gain any ground at least. So I think it's Atlanta.
Can I jump in on the pitching staff for the Mets too? Because I think that's
Go right ahead.
Great point. Because first off, I agree. Jacob deGrom is the best pitcher of my lifetime, certainly. And I've always said I wish, like, if I could go back in time, I would go back and watch the Pedro era in Boston, where people used to go out on Friday nights, go out on Tuesday nights even, if he was pitching, to go see it somewhere because it was such an event. That's what Jacob deGrom was the last couple of years. And I loved seeing it. But now it's just, we keep moving farther and farther from that place because of injury. You look at this rotation with deGrom in it and without him, and it's such a significant drop-off. I feel very comfortable with guys like Max Scherzer and Chris Bassett, but the rest of that group, Carlos Carrasco, Taijuan Walker, Tylor Megill, I don't trust them enough to be like 3, 4, 5 without deGrom at the top of it.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to the NL Central now. And there are 3 teams that kind of stick out in my mind: the Brewers, the Cardinals, and the Cubs. And LJ, again, I know you got to go soon, so I'll get you quick thoughts here. In October, who's winning the division out of those 3 teams?
I mean, if you're making me answer this,
I have to.
I know you have to, and it's I literally have to do we do a 2.5 to 3 hour preseason primer or season primer to begin the season, just like Bill Simmons does with the NBA, and I have to figure that out before then too. I go with Milwaukee. Overall, that's just such a strong team. Christian Yelich couldn't possibly have a worse season than he did last year, and there's just so much. There's a lot to like in the pitching staff. You're 3 deep with guys that are really ones on depending on what team you're on. Burns, Woodruff, Peralta, fantastic players. You've got the best 8th, 9th inning in the league without doubt. And again, there's a lot of room for this offense to continue to improve. Christian Yelich will have some form of bounce back, whether it's to full MVP status or not, I couldn't tell you. And I absolutely love Willy Adames and what he brought to this team last year. I mean, I would have given him MVP votes if I had the option to. That's how good a season and how much of an impact he brought to that Milwaukee roster last year. So they're gonna win back to back.
All right, Christian, up to you. Over to you. Same question.
I 100% agree. I think it's Brewers all the way. As much as I love the Cardinals, I just don't think they're really good enough to beat the Brewers. But I do. I'm disappointed because the Brewers are always one of my favorite teams to watch, and I do love Adames. I love Yelich. They're great players, but they always come up short in the playoffs, and that it really, really aggravates me because they're a team I like to watch, and they have potential to be great, and then they end up playing somebody like the Dodgers or the Braves in the first round of the playoffs, and they're gone. So, but yeah, I do agree. I think it's going to be the Brewers, and I don't really think it's going to be that close.
All right. Now, I got a quick question for you guys. What's the over-under on how many Seiya calls there are for when Seiya Suzuki hits home runs? What's the over-under? What's your I say the over-under is I'll mark it at 30. So it's going to be over, going to be under Seiya home run calls for like, hey, Seiya Suzuki hits another home run. What's the over-under? So you go over the over or the under?
I will give you the under, but I'm giving you 100% of the home runs.
Okay.
Mine is a matter of he's not going to hit 30. Look, they were honestly so smart to bring in Seiya Suzuki because their timetable fits great with some of these Asian professional players that get brought over because the majority of them, with the exception of Shohei Ohtani winning Rookie of the Year, like he's a freak. He's a different animal. We don't go there. But for the most part, they need a minute to catch up to major league pitching. Most of the time when you see these guys and they're really good, they end up being really good at least, their first season doesn't look like the rest of them. So
with the exception of Ichiro Suzuki.
Yes, of course.
Lone exception.
We're talking about Hall of Famers with Shohei and Ichiro. Yes. So for the most part, I think he's going to have a successful tenure in Chicago. I think he's gonna do really well, but he's going to need a little time to adjust to the game. That's why being in Chicago is such a great situation because this team is looking at another year or two before they're actually competitive.
Christian, same question.
I'm gonna have to agree under, but I like LJ said, 100% of the home runs are gonna be the Seiya call. It's kind of has to be.
All right, Ryan, I gotta run, but thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Go ahead, LJ. It's actually LJ LaFiura because I keep. I don't know. For some reason, I see an L instead of an I in your name. But go ahead before you take off. Go ahead and plug your stuff. Where can people find you, and where people can find the podcast you're on?
Yeah, you can find me at LJ VP _ LaFiura on Twitter and everything. But really, the one you want to be following is at MLB Daily Pod on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. I do the majority of my content through that one, so you'll really get to see a lot. We like to really siphon through a lot of the news too. So, I mean, you're going to consistently see retweets from Passan and MLB trade rumors and stuff through us too. So I think it's overall a great follow. Other than that, you can get the podcast anywhere you can get this podcast, actually. I mean, that's the beauty of Belly Up Sports Network. But no, we cover every team every day of the MLB season. I'm really looking forward to year 2 after a very successful year 1 talking about this stuff. And we're really going to, again, if you want fun, but also really informative, really stats-based MLB content, come to us because I really do feel like we know what we're talking about. And we certainly see enough of it going every single day all year long. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, LJ. Well, Christian, it's just me and you for the rest of the time, for the next 15 to 20 minutes.
Alrighty.
All right, so we're gonna move over to the NL West, and NL West is a interesting division because you had the Giants and the Dodgers going down to the wire last year. San Diego kind of petered out after a brilliant 2020 where they won their first playoff series in over 20 years. They kind of petered. They started out well. They kind of petered out as the season went on. Is it a 3-team? Is it as much of a 3-team race as I kind of want to have in my head, or are the Dodgers going to run away with this division?
No, the Dodgers have a literal all-star team. Like each one of those guys in that lineup is an all-star. And it's scary because they are probably going to win over 110 games this season. I can say that with a lot of confidence. They're going to score a lot of runs, and their pitching staff is very good, especially their bullpen. Losing Kenley kind of hurt them, but not as much as people think. Kenley was good, but he wasn't great last year, which is unfortunate because he's one of the best closers, like of our time right now. But I think it's going to be very hard for the Giants to have a repeat of last season, and I think it's going to be really hard for the Padres to even like come close to doing what the Dodgers are going to do this year, especially with Tatis being out for like the first like 2 months, I think. So I think it's really a one-team race, and I'm excited to see how many games the Dodgers can win this year because it's going to be a lot.
All right, so I gotta ask you this since this came up in my head just while when you said the Dodgers have the potential to win 110 games this year. The major league record is 116 by the 1906 Chicago Cubs and the 2001 Seattle Mariners.
Yeah.
Does this lineup have the potential to possibly meet either equal that record or maybe win one or two more? Can we see them win 117, 118 games?
I believe they can, especially with their actual lineup, not necessarily their pitching rotation. They give their pitching rotation a lot of leeway, I feel like, because of how good their hitting is going to be this year. I mean, just think about it. You have Cody Bellinger in center field who could break out any moment like he did in 2019. You have Mookie Betts, who's one of the best outfielders we have in the league right now. Freddie Freeman, probably the best first baseman in my opinion. You got Max Muncy at second base, great hitter, great defensive player. It's really going to be interesting to see what they do. I mean, even Justin Turner, like he's a great player. It's going to be really fun to watch them. And even Will Smith, their catcher, he's a young player, but he's very, very good.
I can insert a slap joke here, but I really don't want to because I think it's kind of played out by now.
Keep the Dodgers name out
of my bleeping mouth. Fun fact, though, Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith are actually minority partners of the New Jersey Devils hockey team. I forgot about that the other day. I'm looking through the Devils roster and their team, and I'm like, totally forgot they're minority partners. But anyway, all right. So all that aside, so let's talk about the division winners, the playoff spots. Which 3 teams win the divisions, and which 3 teams go to the play? Which 3 teams are the playoff now? The wild card. Now, is there a play-in for the wild card, or is it just they play each division winner? I mean, talk to me about that. I might have caught it in the beginning, but I'm a little confused as to the playoff format.
Yeah, honestly, that's a very good question because I'm not so sure either. I think it could be something along the lines of like a 1 through 6 seed. So it could be like 1 and 2 get a bye, and then it's 4 plays 6, 5 plays 7 in like maybe a 1-game series, and then they go to the DS and they go to the CS and then so on and so forth. I think it could be
Okay.
something like that, but I'm not 100% positive.
All right. So I'm doing my research here. I'm looking at NBC Sports Philadelphia. It says the 2022 playoff format will include 12 teams rather than 10. There'll be 6 playoff teams per league, the 3 division winners, and the 3 wild cards.
Mm-hmm.
1 seed is the best overall record is the 1 seed. 2 seed is the second best division record among the winners. 3rd seed is the best division winner record. Is the 3rd best division record winner record. Then you have the 4 through 6 were the wild card. Top 2 seeds get the playoff, get a bye to the divisional round. So you want to win those. You want to be in either the 1 or 2 spot in the league.
Yeah.
And then it says 3 will host 6 for a 3-game series, and 4 will host 5 for a 3-game series.
Yep.
And then the winners move on to, it looks like a 5-game divisional series like we have in the past. So we have this 5-game divisional series, and we have the 7-game championship series, and it goes to a best of 7 World Series. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm a little less confused.
I have the gist of it, yeah.
Okay. I'm a little less confused now. Thank you very much for helping me out with that.
It's kind of like the NBA play-ins. Like,
right.
much as I don't really watch basketball. That's
no, I don't watch much basketball anymore either. I'm trying to get into it, but I can't.
All I know is that the Lakers suck, and so does LeBron. LeBron's washed. He's washed. Russell Westbrook also is washed.
Yeah, that turned out to be a disastrous trade, which is kind of funny.
Super team, my ass.
Yeah, super team. Ugh. Anyway, all right, Christian. So moving on to we're going to talk. Let's switch back to baseball. So
yeah, that's my.
Who are your 3 division winners in the American League, and your 3 wild card teams in the American League?
All righty, I've given this a lot of thought lately.
You give me yours, and I'll give you mine.
All right, I've given this a lot of thought lately.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to take this off for this because I don't want to hurt my voice. All right. All right. So the one seed, I have the. Oh, this is so tough. I hate doing these. I have the.
Remember, Christian. The most predictable thing about the future is that it's unpredictable.
That is true. That is very true. All right. I take back what I said. I don't have the Rangers winning. I don't have the Rangers winning first.
Okay.
All right. 1 seed, Blue Jays. 2 seed, Astros. 3 seed, White Sox. Those are my 3 division winners. Blue Jays, White Sox, and Astros.
Okay.
And then for my 3 wild card spots, these are really tough because there's a lot of very good teams in the AL. I hate to say this, but I have the Yankees missing the playoffs. Their pitching just isn't where it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And that really hurts me, but I think it's bound to happen. So I think the 4 seed is going to be the Red Sox. And the 5 seed, I have the Rangers. And then the 6 seed, I have the Yankees. I have to put them in. I have to put them in. I have to put the Yankees in. I just don't see the Twins beating the Yankees in record-wise, at least. Okay. So that's who I have in. I have Blue Jays in the 1, Astros 2, White Sox 3, and then who did I say? Red Sox.
Okay, this is who I have for you. I've got Toronto 1, Houston 2, White Sox 3, Boston 4, Texas 5, Yankees 6.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see the Twins making it. As much as I want them to, I don't want them to at the same time because I don't like Correa.
All right. So I'm writing these down for A, posterity, and B, we'll come back and revisit these at the end of the season.
So you can bully me when I'm completely wrong and the Rangers.
You can bully me if I get these wrong too. We can bully each other.
Oh yeah. One of us is getting bullied.
One of us is getting bullied. All right. So I'll give you my predictions for American League. So number one, I've got Toronto. I think they're the universal favorite to win the American League regular season pennant.
Yeah.
Two, I've got the White Sox. Just because I think the strength of their pitching, and people might, as much as people say that the game has passed Tony La Russa by, he's still a winner. He knows what he's doing. That's why he's a Hall of Famer. That's why he's won the World Series with two different teams and one in each league. There's a reason why the White Sox brought him in. And the 3 seed, I've got Houston. 4 through 6 gets really interesting. I'm actually going to take the New York Yankees as my 4 seed. And the reason why is because I think if Higashioka can carry over his awesome preseason into the regular season, and it would be a perfect replacement for Gary Sanchez, great.
I've been saying this for 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years.
And I think if their pitching can hold up, especially their starting pitching, outside Garrett Cole, there's a lot of question marks there, but I think there can be, if Severino has the same season he had prior to his prior to Tommy John surgery, and Montgomery can control his control, even though he had a career year in innings pitched, wins, and strikeouts last year. He'd be a good number 3 option as their number 1 lefty. I think they could have done more in their bullpen to secure their bullpen. I think this could be the last go around, the last hurrah for Aroldis Chapman. But aside from his control issues, I think he's still a viable pitcher.
Yeah.
Number 5, I've got Boston, the Boston Red Sox. I've got them at 5. And at 6, I'm going to take Tampa Bay. I think they'll have a lot of catching up to do because of their pitching staff, but the Rays are the Rays. And even with the shift being banned, they're still a very solid team, fundamental-wise. They got Wander Franco. They managed to secure him for 10-plus years. I didn't think the Rays could afford to keep him for that type of money, A, for that type of scratch, and B, for that many years, but they have to believe in him. They got to compete. They've got to compete somehow. And the only way they're going to do that in Major League Baseball, because there's no salary cap in Major League Baseball, the only way to do that is to spend money. And I think their ownership has finally realized that. Now, whether or not that kind of translates to them staying in Tampa Bay, I don't know if they're going to stay in Tampa Bay for too long. I keep hearing rumblings about them moving to Charlotte or Nashville or even Montreal.
Yeah, I know they put in like a request apparently to like split their season between Montreal and Tampa Bay.
Yeah, that was discussed in 2019, and that never came to fruition, unfortunately.
Yeah, that got denied. But I'm very excited to watch Wander Franco this year. He's I mean, dude is ridiculous at baseball. But I have to say the one thing that I'm truly disappointed about that I didn't bring up earlier, which I was mad at myself for not bringing up, is the fact that we are going to go another season without seeing Mike Trout in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I'm so disappointed because we're running out of time. Angels, we're running out of time. I know probably nobody from the Angels is going to see this, but figure it out. Like, get that man some freaking pitching.
They had the pitching. They brought in Syndergaard. They brought in who did they bring in?
I mean, they have Rice.
They brought in Noah Syndergaard. They brought in who else did they bring in?
Nobody.
Anthony Rendon. Let's see. They
Noah Syndergaard.
That's pretty much and Ohtani. Like those are the only pitchers, but I don't know.
I don't know.
There's one website that has them finishing second behind Houston. I
can see that because if Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, and Anthony Rendon are all consistently in that lineup, and Joe Adele performs like he was like hyped up to be, Jared Walsh comes out and performs like he was meant to be. I feel like they could have like a breakout year where they actually do come and finish in second place above Texas, because I mean Texas doesn't really have a lot of pitching, so they could potentially do that.
No, you spend all that money on positional hitting, but you can't pay for a pitcher. That's concerning. All right, National League, Christian. Who's your 1, 2, 3 for division? Who's your 4, 5, 6 for the wild card?
All righty. I feel like the division ones are pretty easy, but the wild card is where it's going to stir things up. I have Dodgers at 1, Braves at 2, and I have the Brewers winning at 3. Um, the wild card is where it gets interesting. Um, I I have the I have the Mets coming in at 4,
Oh,
and I have the the Padres at 5
okay.
and the Phillies at 6.
Okay. Any
Yes.
particular reason why the Phillies went up at the Padres and the Phillies went up at 5 and 6?
I just think they're both better than the Giants, and that's really their next best competition. I don't think um, the Cardinals are going to really have that good year that they've had in the past. Um, and I don't think that the Giants are going to really repeat what they did last year, even with adding Carlos Rodon. It's going to be really tough to do that. But I do see Philly taking a third place in the NL East, but with a very good record. I mean, they have two very, very solid starting pitchers with Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, both which I could see winning the Cy Young Award for the NL this year. So that's why I have them at 3.
Okay. All right. So here's who I have. And I'm pretty sure this is universal between every single every every baseball pundit out there, professional or otherwise. Dodgers first place. They'll finish as the number 1 seed. Atlanta number 2 seed. Milwaukee number 3 seed. Here's where I differ from you in the wild. I'm going to differ from you in the wild card. I got St. Louis as the 4 seed.
Hmm.
I think they did just enough to shore up their depth. I think they did just. I think they have their solid lineup. They're a solid lineup. So
I agree with Harrison Bader in there as well. He's going to be a very good young stud. I don't think their pitching staff's where it needs to be, and I feel like they have a lot of older players, which is good and bad. I mean, they got that veteran leadership, but dudes that are coming out of their prime, like Wainwright, Yachty, it's going to be tough for them to really win with all of them.
yeah, and plus the fact that we had a very compressed, rushed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's going to be tough for them to really
spring
get in their
training.
groove and get
It's gonna be
started.
tough for any. Well, it's gonna be tough for any rotation.
Yeah, I agree.
To be honest with you, but I think they're still deep enough, and they can win enough games to secure the 4th spot. 5th spot, I've got the New York Mets. I think they have just enough. If DeGrom comes back in June, he'll be back to his old form. They just need to find a way to score some runs for him because from what I remember, for the last couple seasons, when Jake DeGrom's on the mound, the Mets they don't give him enough run support.
Jacob deGrom loses 1-0.
Exactly. And I think and the fact that, again, raise your hand if you forgot Buck Showalter was the manager of the Mets. I
Not
did.
me.
I did.
I'm excited to see Bucky back.
Yes.
I like Buck a lot.
I love
I think
Buck.
he's a great manager. One of the best.
Yeah, even when he wasn't managing the Yankees, I still have I still have a soft spot in my heart for him.
Oh yeah.
But I got the Mets finishing in the 5th spot. I've got San Diego in the 6th spot. I know they're going to miss Fernando Tatis for a while, but they've got a deep enough roster and decent enough pitching. I think they could surprise a lot of people this year. I think this is a bounce back season for the Pods in terms of a playoff spot. I know everything kind of melted down last year with a lot of egos clashing in the locker room. You could visibly see it in the dugout. But
Mhm.
I think when you rise so fast and you fall so hard, you have one of two options. You either come back and you rise again, you come back with the phoenix from the ashes, you come back, you rise again, you come back and you have an amazing season, or you continue to melt and you sink deeper and deeper down, and they gotta blow the thing up and start all over again. But I think the Padres learned their lesson from last year, being that they had a tremendous 2020. They were the most fun teams in Major League Baseball to watch. And having that failure from last year, I think they've learned from it. I think they've learned from it. And I think they have enough to get into the wild card spot.
Interesting.
All right.
I can definitely see it happening. I just don't think it's going to.
Understood. I guess,
But
and like I said, the most
it's
predictable thing about the future is it's unpredictable.
very
So all these predictions that we make now are going to be total crap. And when it comes to the playoffs in October. All right. So who do you have coming out of each league as your World Series representative?
This is tough. This is very tough because a lot of these teams are young and not a lot of playoff really like experience. So it's tough. Um, I can see the White Sox possibly coming out of the AL. There's a
Oh,
little sleeper pick. I can also see the Yankees coming out of the AL. They just have that, I feel like, playoff fight. As bad as Garrett Cole choked against Boston in the playoffs last year, it was unfortunate. But I can really see them having a bounce back year, really driving and striving for that World Series championship. I know a lot of the guys on that team are really dedicated to that push for 28. But I think if Stanton, Judge, Gallo, if they all hit like they were signed to hit,
and stay healthy.
especially Stanton and Judge, if they can stay healthy, get consistent at bats, consistently see live pitching, I think, especially Stanton, I think he could have an MVP type year. And I mean, you saw what he did in the playoffs last year. He was ridiculous. So I think he can really help.
August and September for sure.
Yeah.
He
Oh
was
my
a
God.
monster.
Stanton is just, when he's on, and he's one of the
Yes.
most fun players to watch in the league.
Yep.
So I think I can see both the White Sox and the Yankees coming out of that AL division, but I think it's going to be the White Sox. I can see the White Sox make it to the World Series. I love the Blue Jays, but I think they're just a little too young to do that, especially with Vlad and Bo Bichette. I mean, I like that lineup. It's just I don't think it's where it really needs to be right now. I think they need one more year, just one more year of playoff experience. I think they're going to make it to the CS and just come a little short. I think I can see the White Sox winning 4-3 in the ALCS.
And now, who's your NL pick?
This is tough, but I'm gonna have to say Braves again. I'm a big Braves fan. I'm a big Acuna fan, and I'm really rooting for him. And I think they have just enough to beat the Dodgers.
Okay.
I think it's gonna be very close in the ALCS. It's obviously gonna be Dodgers Braves, but I think it's gonna be Braves 4-3. We're gonna have some fun playoff series to watch this year. I'm very excited.
All right. And who's your World Series champ?
I got Braves repeating. I really like this lineup. They have a great pitching staff, great lineup. I think Acuna, with him coming back, them having Austin Riley back, Dansby Swanson back, and Matt Olson coming to their team, I think it's going to be a really hard team to beat. And especially with that pitching staff with Max Fried, he's coming off a year where he had very good stuff. Ian Anderson was a great pitcher in the playoffs, great pitcher for them to have. And I'm excited for him to be up for a full season with the Braves. And, 5-1-8 kid. Ian Anderson's a 5-1-8 kid.
Yep.
It's gonna be great to watch. So I see Braves repeating.
All right. As for myself, I'm gonna take Houston coming out of the American League again. I just have a feeling that they're gonna be, even though they lost Correa, I think they still have a lot. Dusty Baker can do a lot with a little. And
You got to remember they're still getting Verlander back too, so they're going to be Verlander is going to be dominant once again. I mean, every year that he pitches, he just seems to get better and better, and I love that about Verlander.
Yeah, I think a year off is going to do wonders for him. In the National League, I've got Atlanta too. I've got a rematch of Houston and Atlanta in the World Series, and I've got Atlanta winning it all again. I think they win it at Truist Park in Atlanta this time around. So that's my prediction. All right, Christian, tell people where can find you if you got something going on with the podcasts, if you got social media, where can people find you?
Yeah, my friend and I have a podcast. It's called Throwin Smoke. We don't really do much on that anymore. We're both really busy college students, so we try to upload when we can. I'm sure we're gonna do an episode probably fairly soon. I mean, we kind of have to with MLB starting up again. But
Yeah, you do.
I mean, you can follow me on that. You can follow me on Instagram at MacLifts. If you wanna go watch me lift some heavy circles, and or you can just follow my main Instagram if you want at CMac0602.
All right. Thanks for joining me, Christian. Appreciate you, buddy.
Of course, it's a pleasure as always.